Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Fires upfield into the end zone. It is caught. Jelani Woods, touchdown! IND1! 43-point night for Tyrese Halliburton.
How do you like that, partner?
Renew now, drives in low, throws up a shot. It doesn't go. Tipped up and in by Anthony Leal. Indiana takes the lead.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
Now, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Hey, everybody. Welcome aboard. Appreciate you being with us on this Wednesday. Indiana Sports Beat Radio here. And Jim Coyle at the steering wheel. Dylan Sinn from Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette should be joining us today. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star and Rick Bozich from WDRB.com. Looking forward to talking to all three of those. How are you? How's your week going? We've made it to the halfway point. Yesterday was not quite as hot as it has been, but that was just a slight reprieve, as I think that the warmth will be returning. Hope everybody is doing well, like I said. Baseball, I guess you'd call it sad news. The Say Hey kid, Willie Mays, passes away. Most call him either possibly the best baseball player ever, the most complete baseball player ever. Was he a godfather or the uncle to Barry Bonds? I think he was his uncle, right? But one of the greatest. He played before my time, but didn't really get to watch him. But I was certainly aware of him. The catch in the World Series, the over-the-shoulder catch, that was something that was amazing. But he was one of the greats, and you always hate to see the greats of sports pass, but he was certainly a good one. Played for the Giants for the most part, but he was certainly a great one and will be missed. Speaking of the Indy's WTHR's Dave Calabro, longtime sports anchor there, is retiring from television at the end of the year. I think 30 plus years in TV for WTH, or in Indy at least. And so there's another familiar face that will be going away, but I bet he won't be going far. He's been doing a lot of work at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway for a long time as one of the announcers. I would bet that continues, but we shall see. How's everything else going? The College World Series continues. I think Florida's game was postponed yesterday in Kentucky by weather to today.
That is true. They are playing today, and the winner will also play this evening. So they'll be playing two games.
Oh, wow. In the same day.
Yes.
Yikes. I expected they would play back-to-back days, but yeah, I did not know that. Oh, wow. So the elimination game coming up today, we'll be seeking on that. Does K-Bro get his stay extended in Omaha? We will certainly find out. As far as Indiana basketball, got visits set with Jalen Harrelson, the much coveted 5-star. I call him a point guard. He's listed as all kinds of different positions, but it's because of his size. He's 6'7", but unique that can play the point. But he's one of the top players in the 2025 class in the state of Indiana. Also has set his date for his official visit. And that will be happening on August 31st, Indiana's first football game against Florida International. That comes about 1, 2, 3 weeks before. The 21st is when the other 3 guys are in the Moreno and Sisley and Mullins will be visiting Indiana. So there's a lot of visits set right there. But Harrelson will also be going to Notre Dame, I saw, and Michigan State. Those dates are set. How about the job that Micah Shrewsbury is doing at Notre Dame, though? I knew that it would not be long. He's a great guy. He's a good recruiter. He's going to get his, and it's going to be amazing to watch Notre Dame make kind of a run back. They have not been much in basketball for a while, but I think that changes with Micah Shrewsbury. I'm not the only person that thinks that, but he's going to take advantage of being where he is in the state of Indiana, first of all, because he's got a talent pool to draw from. He does a good job recruiting. He's been out recruiting. He's recruiting Trent Sisley and all the other guys in the state. And as hard as everybody else is, he's going to land his. And at some point, it'll once it starts happening, that will probably just start to feed itself. But Harrelson's recruitment is now down to just 9 schools, by the way. After he cut his list a while back: Indiana, Duke, Kansas. You ever heard of those programs? Auburn, Purdue, Missouri. Seeing a school like Missouri that's still in there, I don't get. Gonzaga, Notre Dame, and Michigan State, all still vying for his services. I really don't. 9 schools, it's like, come on, man. And I'm not, this is not against him. We have this discussion all the time. But it's like, okay, does Missouri really have a chance here? I don't think so. Is Missouri going to beat out Indiana and Duke and Kansas and Auburn and Purdue and Notre Dame and Michigan State? I just would find that hard to believe. Gonzaga, too far away. They're not. You're not going to go out and play in the middle of nowhere. I don't think from here personally. So to me, that knocks it down to 7. Still a tough 7, even if you take those schools out with Notre Dame, Michigan State, Purdue, Auburn, Kansas, Duke, and Indiana. But he is certainly a wanted man. He has got some skills. He is someone that should definitely be heading to the NBA after whenever his college days end, if it's after 1 year, 2 years, whatever it happens to be. He plays for the Indy Heat on the EYBL circuit, Nike EYBL circuit. He's averaged a little over 21 points per game, along with 5.5 rebounds, shot 46% from the field. Fellow top priorities in that same class, like I mentioned, Trent Sisley, Braylon Mullins, and Malachi Moreno, also set to visit a couple of weeks later. The weekend of August 31st will not be Harrelson's first time on the Indiana campus in Bloomington, as the La Lumiere Star has been a top target for the Hoosiers for a long time. So these are just official visits, and the schools are allowed to do a lot more for them. The unofficials, I think you can get tickets, and that's pretty much it. But in this case, they get the meal, the whole deal. They get, they do the. I don't know if they're going to do all the picture stuff again, if they have already done that. But Brian says that is that Kanan Catchings signs with BYU? Yeah, how about BYU? BYU on the rise. As a matter of fact, in basketball, that's I have to say I shouldn't say shocked, but surprised. Let's see, he can't. As long as he doesn't drink or smoke, he'll be fine. I'm kidding. You know, the Mormons, you can't do all that stuff. But yeah, but BYU's a good program. But that was under. They had a great year under Mark Pope, who's currently at Kentucky. So they just had a coaching change. That's another surprise. And as a matter of fact, it's a write-up that landing him. But, of course, he is the, nephew of Tamika Catchings? But he is a projected first-round pick already in 2025. That's pretty amazing. He met with their coach out there and their staff last week and said they immediately clicked. According to a report that he told ESPN, he said he knew right away this was the best fit for me. He had committed to Purdue and Matt Painter, but after being on campus, decided that was not the place. Whatever that reason was, he reopened his recruitment earlier in the month. He did go visit Florida State and North Carolina State, as well as BYU, before picking the Cougars. None of those three schools are the ones that just jump out like you would think. And I guess when you're a projected first-round pick, it almost doesn't really matter. You're not going to get lost. Maybe you stand out more. Maybe that's something that he was looking for. But he is the nephew of Naismith Hall of Famer Tamika Catchings, who was a WNBA MVP and 10-time All-Star in a decorated career with the Indiana Fever, as well as 4 Olympic gold medals. His mom, Kanan's mom, played college basketball at Illinois, and she was also a WNBA draft pick. And his grandfather, Harvey, spent 11 seasons in the NBA. So Kanan has got he's got hoops in his blood, literally running through his veins, man. So no doubt about that. Well, we've got to take a break. Looking forward to talking to Dylan Sinn up next from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, getting caught up on all things that are happening in and around the state. And we'll be back with that. Brought to you by the Autograph app, where real fans get unreal rewards. Just go to your Apple app or Google Play Store today and download the Autograph app using the code ISB Media, please. And also, don't forget, powered by Andy Moore Honda, where you get the best in new and used vehicles. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com to get more to your door. We're back with more here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market.
And look at that, right on time, Mr. Dylan Sinn.
Morning, guys.
Da, 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 da.
All right, I'm going to grab my coffee. I'll be right back.
I'm going to grab my coffee. I'll be right back.
We can talk during commercials this time.
Yes, and I can hear you even if I'm not sitting there. It doesn't mean I can still hear you.
All right.
What's happening now? How was your week?
Oh, not bad. Not bad. Got Got plenty done. Tin caps are in town, so finished the high school.
So you finished the high school season?
Yep, everything's done.
Any baseball winners up there?
No, actually, we didn't even have anyone make it to the championship. We had 3 baseball teams lose in the semi-state. Yeah, we had 5 softball teams and 3 baseball teams lose at the semi-state. So that was a tough season for us. But
What do you say?
what kind of coffee do you have?
I've got a bunch of different ones at my house right now, but today I'm drinking mushroom enhanced coffee, and not the hallucinogen mushroom, the good for you mushrooms. That's pretty good though. It's supposed to be good for your gut health compared to regular coffee, which I have some gut health issues every now and again, so that's why I chose that coffee specifically this morning. I've got some brown sugar coffee that's really good that I got while I was on vacation. All right, guys, got about 30 seconds.
Your one-stop shop for high-quality meats, bakery items, and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Chop Shop, home of the Indiana football and men's basketball coaches shows. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, welcome back. Appreciate you being with us on this Wednesday. Hope all things are going well and you're staying relatively cool. Yesterday wasn't bad. Dropped a little bit after that front move through. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette joins us now. How are you, sir?
I'm good. Thanks for having me on, as always, Jim.
Always my pleasure, bro. Always things happening still always in basketball. We were just talking about Kanan Catchings is going to end up at BYU.
That's right.
Which is they always have 12 guys or 13 guys on the roster, so they always have people, but it's usually not kids from Indiana that end up at a place like BYU. Or that just seemed like kind of an odd landing spot, especially after they just had a coaching change. But I was talking about it earlier. He's on his visit. He just said he felt instantly like it was a spot for him, and his other choices were down to was Florida State and North Carolina State, which if I would have had to pick, I would have gone with North Carolina State because they are just on an absolute athletics roll. I talked about this very thing yesterday, as a matter of fact, how they have done in athletics. First of all, you think of North Carolina State as the stepbrother in the state of North Carolina alone, much less the ACC. But North Carolina State is currently playing in their second College World Series in 4 years. They won 9 football games last year. They went to the men's basketball Final Four. They went to the women's basketball Final Four. They've just won their third straight women's cross country national championship. They just won the ACC men's swimming championship. They just won the ACC's gymnastics championship. That's a pretty damn good role for a school that is not what I would say in the upper echelon of the ACC. When you think North Carolina, Duke, a myriad of other teams, but North Carolina State is not one, but they are just on an absolute roll. in that regard, but they did not get Kanan Catchings.
Yeah, no, it's been really impressive what they've done, and obviously their Final Four run in men's basketball last year was one of the more kind of surprising in the recent history of men's basketball. But no, Catchings ends up at BYU. BYU's coach, their new coach after Mark Pope left for Kentucky, is Kevin Young. He's been an NBA assistant for the last 8 years. He was with the 76ers, and then the Suns the last couple of years. So he has NBA experience. Catchings wants to be a one and done. He's projected to be a first round pick next year. I'm not sure how much I actually believe that projection. ESPN has him in the 20s. I think he's more of a 2-year guy, more of a you kind of get your body right in your first year, kind of go through a college weight room for a year, and then kind of explode as a sophomore, which would be great for BYU, obviously, get him for a couple of years. But yeah, he's basically like they're going to have a pretty good team next year, and obviously he makes his decision about maybe a week or a little bit more after leaving Purdue. So yeah, they have some momentum there.
Usually when you lose a coach, you've got a year of transition coming no matter what. But BYU that's not the case. They're kind of hitting the ground running with a new staff, as Philip points out, that they also landed projected first round pick Eagle Denham. And so that's 2 projected first round draft picks. Indiana doesn't have that. Purdue doesn't have that. So that's pretty stout.
Yeah. And that's what they wanted. Kevin Young comes in, like I said, a lot of NBA experience. Like that's kind of the goal here, is to have a really smooth transition. It's not like Mark Pope was setting the world on fire. They had good teams, but they lost in the first round of the NCAA tournament there, so there's ceiling left for that program to still get to, and they have the talent to do it this year. Again, I'm not sure how good they're going to be this year. They have some talent. I think it might take until a year or two for it to really come together. But no, they are not going to have that. Well, coach left. I mean, especially with the coach leaving late. Like Calipari didn't leave for Arkansas until the Final Four, and then Pope wasn't hired at Kentucky until April. So they got a new coach relatively late in the cycle. And had to kind of to scramble a little bit, and they've done a great job with it. They hired a guy who seems like he wants to be there, who comes from the NBA to college, which is something you don't see all that often anymore. We talk a lot about college coaches leaving for the NBA as much as possible, and Kevin Young might have been on a track to be an NBA head coach at some point. He was an associate head coach the last 4 years. And for him to now get this job in college and to hit the ground running like this is pretty impressive. So we'll see what happens there. But it seems like BYU might have a pretty bright future here.
Absolutely. And speaking of recruiting, I also mentioned earlier in the show that Indiana's highest ranked player of the state, Jalen Harrelson, has selected his visit time to come to Indiana. His official, which will be the first football game of the year, August 31st, when the Hoosiers play Florida International. He'll also be going to Notre Dame and Michigan State. And I was talking, and I have previously many times, the job. It's only a matter of time before Micah Shrewsbury starts making dents in what he's trying to do at Notre Dame. I mean, he's out there recruiting. I've seen him down at Heritage Hills recruiting Trent Sisley. That's a trip, man. And I mean, it's a long trip. It's not wild or anything like that. Go back to people John's drinking his mushroom coffee, so I don't want him to flip out, go on a trip. Just kidding. But there's a lot of guys in this class this year. Indiana has Jalen coming in on the 31st, like I said. Then not quite a month later, on September 21st, that weekend, the trio will be in. Moreno, Mullins, and Sisley will all be in on a visit. in previous years, I would always say, well, there's pressure. There's pressure to land some of these guys, and there kind of still is, but not really anymore with the portal. This is more about it's halfway about getting guys that fans would like to see on their roster, but these are all top-notch players, don't get me wrong, but there are other players out there that Indiana is recruiting heavily. They're not going to get them all. That's why you recruit 10 to get 3. You recruit 15 to get 3. It's a numbers game. And how many of those 4, I wonder, will Indiana end up getting? Because I don't think they're getting all 4 of them for certain. I'm not sure that they get more than 2 of them, and possibly just 1.
And that's the thing is, I mean, they're like, this is what they're trying to do is go back to, we talked about this before, is they went through the portal this offseason. They got a couple like foundational pieces with Miles Rice and Kaden Carlisle, who they expect to be there for a couple of years. That's basically high school recruiting by another name, is getting guys with 3 years of eligibility left. They expect those guys to be there as kind of foundational pieces. And now you go back into high school recruiting, and you're hoping to get more foundational pieces. I'm not sure if any of these guys, Jalen Harrelson maybe, and Trent Sisley could be. I don't think so, but could be like a 1 or 2 and done type of guy, just because he has such a unique skill set. But I think most of these guys, they're expecting to be in college for a few years at least. So you get them for a couple of years as kind of foundational pieces for the future. And that's why it's not essential, as you said, that they get these guys, but it'd be very, very nice to get 2 or 3 of them, right? Like that's why you still go through high school recruiting, is you can get these guys and bring them through the system. And so, yeah, like obviously portal recruiting is more and more important, and Indiana has shown that you can recruit that way and be successful. But the question now is, can you you still want to have guys overall that you're going to be able to build around for a couple of years. I mean, they've done that with Malik Renew, right? He's been there for 3 years. They're going to do it with Gabe Cupps. He's going to be there for a while. Mackenzie Mbako is there for 2 years. So you still want to be able to recruit high school kids, get them into the program, and get them into the system. I think that's what this class is for. There's a lot of talent in this class. There's a lot of guys from Indiana that they feel like they can get. And so they're going to go out and try to do it. And that couple of weeks in September is going to be really, really important. Hopefully fans show up for the football game. They get a little bit of a nice environment there, and that'll be nice to see for those players that are in town.
Yeah, I think that's going to be interesting. That's a whole other subject we'll talk about. But Purdue only has 1 expected available scholarship next year right now. Even losing Kanan Catchings, they're back to even, because they were going to have to force someone off of a scholarship that was on scholarship. And then that still only leaves 1 available for next year, while they're recruiting Trent Sisley and Braylon Mullins. The difference between, say, them and in Indiana is Indiana has room for all of them. We'll have room for all of them. Purdue is not the case. So now Purdue, in essence, is recruiting Sisley against Mullins amongst any others.
Yeah, and that's the thing, is that I think my impression is that they're all in on Sisley. I think that, like, obviously they would like to have Braylon Mullins if they could. They've obviously offered him a scholarship, and if Sisley says goes elsewhere, then Braylon Mullins, I assume, would be a guy that they would really go all in on. But Sisley is their guy, as far as I can tell. They've been on him for years now. He's been awesome. Like, I've been really impressed by what, like, we talked about Braylon Mullins getting rising in the rankings, and obviously he did the last couple of days. But the Sisley, what he's done recently at the Indiana All-Star game and then at the Indiana camp the last couple of days, has been really, really impressive. I mean, he had 48 points in a game sitting in Bloomington the other day. Baby. He's awesome. Like, he is a guy who can score at all 3 levels. He's got huge size. That's why I like his ranking. Doesn't tell you one and done, and I don't think he will be. But he's one of those guys that if he gets some momentum going, NBA scouts could start salivating over him because he is just so long and so crafty. He has that type of game, and it's really, really impressive what he's done. And so Purdue, as far as I can tell, he is the guy that they would like. But obviously they love Mullins. They like Harrelson, but Sisley is the guy that they would like if they could have their pick.
Well, he's such a unique player in that he's a toolbox, man. He can bring the ball up the floor if he had to. He can go inside and pound in the paint, or step out and consistently knock down 3-point shots as he has been doing over the course of the summer and getting better and better. So he just brings, like you said, he just brings a multitude of things with his game that are very, very enticing, and his defense will just continue to get better because Todd Leary's on here quite often. He's been worked with him some, but he just talks about him. He's just a sponge. He just wants to be coached. He wants to be better. Boy, he's a coach's dream.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the thing. That's what Purdue has kind of built their program around, is guys who are going to take coaching and really, and that's the thing, is if he stays around in college for 2 or 3 years, he would have a different role each year, right? He would come in at Purdue and probably be a shooter his first year, kind of an off-ball type of guy. His second year, he comes in and starts having the ball in his hands a little bit more, and they run plays for him as a third scorer or something like that. And if he stays around for his junior year, he'd probably be the main scorer on the team because he just has that kind of talent, and he would probably develop that way. And so that's a guy you want as a foundational piece, is a guy who is going to come in, get better over a few years, but be able to play a role that you want from him. And that's what Sisley is a guy who can basically fill in the gaps really, really well on a roster. Like, he can do X, Y, Z that you don't have, and that can be different each year that he's there. And I think that that's kind of why he really fits what Matt Painter does so well. And obviously he would fit at Indiana too. Let's be clear about that. Like, Indiana would love to have him. But basically he is a player that Matt Painter has done really well at getting and developing over the years.
Yeah, I do not see Braylon Mullins ending up at Purdue for a couple of reasons. First and foremost, they got in way, way late on his recruiting. Yeah. So I don't, whereas Purdue and Matt Painter have been in on Trent Sisley for a while, that's not the case for Braylon Mullins. And so he has a much better relationship with the Indiana staff. Even some other schools have offered him before Purdue. So I just don't expect to see Mullins going there. Sisley, Trent, that's going to be, I don't know, that's going to be a tougher one. But I think that's the more important get for Indiana from a optics standpoint, because he is a deep Southern Indiana kid, and Indiana does not lose those guys to Purdue. It has happened once. It happened with Trey Kaufman-Renn, but it happened because of Archie Miller. And if Archie Miller was not at Indiana at the time, I don't think that Indiana loses Renn to Purdue personally. But that is no longer the case. And so I don't know if Indiana has done enough to get him, because I know Painter has recruited him heavily and still is recruiting him heavily. And it's also the same for Purdue and Matt Painter. It's an optics thing. If he can pull another kid out of Southern Indiana, out of what you would call Indiana territory, that's another little nail in the fence, I guess you'd say. And over time, you start to see those. Every time you put a nail in, and every time you lose a recruit, you pull that nail out. Well, after a while, what you have left are holes, and so that's another hole that will be built into that facade. That's Indiana recruiting territory.
Yeah, and we should mention as well, you talked about it earlier, Shrewsbury is in on both of those guys, on Sisley and on Mullins, and Harrelson too. Like, that's what I find so fascinating about this this class of three guys with Sisley, Mullins, and Harrelson is that it's not just Indiana and Purdue that are after these guys and going head to head a little bit. It's Notre Dame is in on it too. I can't remember a class where Notre Dame, Purdue, and Indiana are going head to head for a couple of guys in such a blatant way, right? Like they're in on these guys. They all want them. They all think they have a chance, and it's going to be really interesting to see just how that unfolds and the recruiting strategies of these three teams and how they're going to go about it, because it's going to be fascinating over the summer months here, because all three of them are very valuable players. All three programs want them, and I'm fascinated to see how that plays out, because Shrewsbury, as you said, I think is a great coach, and I think he's going to get recruiting going there pretty soon. This would be a great way for him to start, is pulling a couple of these guys away from IU or Purdue.
Well, he's going to land somebody. Like I think I said that earlier. There's no doubt to me. He is doing a hell of a job. He is going to make a huge dent for Notre Dame in recruiting. Earlier in the summer, I was talking to him at one of the AAU events, and I was curious if Notre Dame, how bought in they were with NIL on the basketball side of things, because you think of Notre Dame and NIL, well, just like Indiana, where you would think it's all going to go to basketball, you would think that the NIL money would be heading first and foremost to Notre Dame football. But I think that they're making some dents there as well. Obviously, the recruiting that he's doing, a heck of a job. So, and how ironic is, the coaches of all three of these schools are all from Indiana, by the way.
Oh yeah. And it's been a while since that was true too, right? Obviously they lean toward hiring Indiana guys over the years, but just having all three of them from Indiana at the same time, it's kind of wild. We might be entering kind of a golden era for these three programs combined, which is going to be really, really interesting to see. And I'm fascinated to see how that plays out. Shrewsbury, yeah, you talk about Notre Dame NIL. Obviously, the football team has gotten its NIL figured out. I think it's fair to say that recruiting has been really good the last couple of years. Women's basketball recruiting for Notre Dame obviously they're a premier program in the country, but their women's basketball recruiting has been gangbusters. They brought in several high-profile transfers this offseason. So I think Notre Dame has a lot of money, and they've figured out a way to do NIL in a way that makes them feel like they're not they're sticking with the values of their school, and they figured out a way to do NIL that way, and it has worked for them. Their recruiting across the board is doing pretty well, and I think that combined with Shrewsbury's just kind of basketball acumen is going to get that program going sooner rather than later here, because that's what he did at Penn State. They struggled their first year at Penn State, and his second year he really had it rolling. So again, if he can do it at Penn State, there's no reason he can't do it at Notre Dame.
And Notre Dame is doing it kind of on the quiet, so to speak. You don't hear it. It's not a talking point as far as, oh boy, this guy that they landed asked for X number and all that. So we don't hear that. Hey, we've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette is with us. We're back with more after this. Brought to you by Cheryl Sizemore and Remax Realty for those in the market for a home in the Indianapolis area. Cheryl Sizemore and her 2 decades of experience could be the difference between getting the home you want or not. Reach out to her, Cheryl, at IndyHomePros.com. Don't forget the Myborg Golf outing also coming up at Heartland Crossing. That's Thursday. Myself and Bob Kravitz will be there. We've got more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Back with it right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
If you're looking for a home,
Did you see Mullins rose to number 24 in the 24/7 rankings?
No.
He rose like 70 spots in the rankings that came out yesterday.
Yeah, he's up to 31 in Rivals.
Yeah.
So overall, he's probably 27 or something.
Yeah, like he is. He might be a 5-star by the time this thing is all said and done.
Well, you got to be in what, top 15?
No, that's.
I think
the 5
24/7
is the grade, not necessarily the ranking number.
What?
Yeah.
The 5, whether or not you get a 5, is based on your grade that they give you rather than your number. Does that make sense?
So there's
Well,
a
it does,
different
but
there's a different number of 5-stars every year, basically.
Yes. It's not like if you're 15th, you're automatically a 5-star type of thing.
But yeah.
I think it depends on if you're in like the Rivals top 15, you're a 5-star.
Is that how Rivals does it?
I think that it is.
Okay.
Let's take a look here. I mean, that's how it is currently. So that could be the case.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure of the grades. What grade do they?
Maybe I'm thinking of a different site that does the grades. I thought they all did different grade. Like they put like a number, like out of 100.
Well, that's positional. You're probably thinking of position. They either do it nationally or in the state, and nationally and by position.
Gotcha. Because they have like it's kind of a rating, I guess, like the grade. It's kind of like a rating.
Yeah.
It has like 24/7 has, I think, it met at a 92 or something like that. It's 95 right now. He was 92 earlier.
All right, here we go, guys.
Beats the prices and selection of Andy Moore Honda in Bloomington. Right now, get a brand new Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right, 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment-free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to AndyMooreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Freethink Apparel. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Wednesday. We made it to the halfway point. Hump day. Dylan Sid from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette with us. How hot is it up north?
It's warm. Yeah, it didn't get lower than like 75 degrees all night. And it was very warm yesterday. Like you said, not quite as warm as Monday, but still up there, and it's gonna be the same thing today, somewhere in the low 90s. So
yeah, I was over here just listening to a weather thing in the background yesterday, and they were talking about that we're in what they call a heat dome. I'm like, well, I don't know what a heat dome is, but I know it does not sound good.
it sounds ominous. Yeah.
A dome of heat has centered in over the Midwest, but I think it's supposedly shifting off to the Northeast, but the temperatures are not going with it. They're staying in the 90s, man.
It's gonna be 90 all week. Yeah, it's very, very warm. I'm covering the Tin Caps here this week, and it's warm out at the ballpark. It is about as warm as it gets. So
yeah, being at a baseball game in that heat is not fun because you're just sitting there. There's no wind. Well, I don't know about that ballpark, but usually, in a bigger ballpark, there's no wind at all. Yeah. And so you've got all those extra people. So it's, those stadiums keep heat in a lot of the times. The newer ones, not so much, but still you got people all around you. It's like, no, get away. You want to have a seat that's just got open seats around it. How are the Tin Caps doing, by the way?
That's why Wrigley Field is so nice. You get out in the bleachers, like the wind moves through. So it's fun to go to games there because they have that. You get a breeze, which is, like you said, fairly rare at some of these ballparks. So
cool the breeze. Man, football. I've talked a lot about football this week, and the new Big Ten coming up, Dylan, with the addition of the four previous Pac-12 teams. Indiana has Washington and UCLA on their schedule, or their two Western games. They will travel to UCLA in the third week of the season on September 14th. And of the 12 games on Indiana's schedule, there are only two that I would say, okay, you cannot expect Indiana to win those. I don't know what Michigan's going to be like after a coaching change, but the amount of teams in the Big Ten that have had a coaching change this past season or one season ago is staggering. UCLA, these are all on Indiana's schedule. UCLA, Northwestern, Nebraska, Washington, Michigan State, Michigan, and Purdue. Yeah. All of those teams have new coaches or a second-year coach. Boy, that in and of itself is a mesmerizing stat. But that is also part of why I think Indiana and Kurt Cignetti will have the opportunity to have potentially a historic season in his first year, which I ran into Jeremy Gray yesterday. IU's head of communications, and I told him, I said, I'm anything but a homer. I don't do that. It's not me. I said, it's hard to talk about Indiana football without sounding kind of like a homer because of the potential that is laying before them. 8 home games on the schedule. And like I said, there's only 2 games that I would say, okay, if I have to pick 2 losses, boom, there's the losses, Michigan and Ohio State. But every other game, there are 10 winnable games on this schedule, 8 home games. How crazy could it get for Indiana football?
Yeah, I am fascinated to see that happen because if you look at the early season schedule, you get Florida International, Western Illinois. You should start 2-0, and then you get UCLA on the road. If you win that game, you come back home for Charlotte. That means you're going to be 4-0. If you beat UCLA, you should be 4-0 going into a September 28th home game against Maryland. If IU is 4-0 going into a game against Maryland, right? If you go into that game 4-0, that is going to be an actually crazy environment because people will be starting to buy in at that point, right? So I'm fascinated to see that. Yes. So here is the flip side, though. Here is the flip side, and this is why I think that this is. You said it has the potential to be a historic season, and you're right. It's maybe the most important season of Indiana football in decades. There is because Indiana is really trying to invest in football. And they're really making an effort. Kurt Cignetti has come in and done everything he possibly can to get people to buy in immediately. He's gone through the portal. He's rebuilt the roster. He's brought a bunch of his guys from JMU. He said we're gonna win right away. Great, all that is good stuff. Problem is, this is as easy as it's gonna get for Indiana in the Big Ten, right? This is the year to make noise. You would even in the portal era with a new coach. You would like to have a year to kind of ramp up and say, okay, maybe we win 4 games or 5 in the first year, and then you get to 7 or 8 in the second year. Indiana doesn't have that luxury. They have to win this year because of what you just said. Because there are so many teams that are gettable on this schedule, you have to go out and win right away to prove that you have some staying power in this league and that Kurt Cignetti has a chance to really turn this thing around. I think not going to a bowl game this year would actually be a pretty significant disappointment and would be a pretty rough sign for the program under Cignetti going forward and for the program's efforts to really invest in football going forward. You have to kind of, because the schedule is so friendly and because it's going to get more difficult as you go forward in the Big Ten, I do think that this is the year to do something, which puts a lot of pressure on a year one coach, even a coach as good and as qualified as Kurt Cignetti is. So there is potential, yes, and I think that there is a chance that this team is very good. They seem to have they've turned over the roster. There's not a whole lot of glaring weaknesses on the team, but it's also one of those things where now if you don't win 6, 7, even 8 games, you start, I think 6 or 7, I think you're feeling fine. But if you only win 4 or 5, it's a pretty bad sign going forward, because then a lot of that momentum you've built would be a little bit derailed. And so I think that it's really important for them to win this year, which puts a lot of pressure on this season in a way you don't normally see for Indiana football. So I'm fascinated to see that play out. If you're going to have a coach who is going to handle that pressure, I think Cignetti's a good one. I don't think he cares about that at all. I think he's ready for that. But it's still going to be one of those things where he's coaching in the Big Ten for the first time. Let's see what you got, and I'm fascinated.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. He doesn't care about, he's not thinking about the outside noise. He's creating the outside noise. That's something that he's done. He has created the outside noise, so he's not having to worry about that. But I do agree with you. That would be a horrific disappointment not going to a bowl game for Indiana this year, because there's no reason. It's made for you to go to a bowl game. You've gotten out of the Big Ten East. You don't have the 3 monsters on the schedule. You've got Ohio State and Michigan, but you got to play somebody. Gee whiz. But I think they made out like a bandit, because Washington is one of the teams that's coming in new to the conference, but they lost Kalen DeBoer. They lost Ryan Grubb. They lost everything. They're a new team. Yes. They're not as bad as UCLA probably. And when I say as bad, I mean UCLA is in a different situation. Their coach left to become an OC at Ohio State. So I never in a million years would I've ever thought a head coach at UCLA would leave on his own for an OC job. Now, Ohio State is not your everyday job. I get it, but it's still, you're the OC. Now, maybe that's better. He's like, I got less pressure, and I'm going to make the same amount of money probably and win a hell of a lot more.
And I think they weren't too happy with him at UCLA too. It was one of those things where you're kind of beating the posse out of town. I think is now, he wasn't going to get fired this offseason, but there was rumblings that they were not all too pleased with him out there either. So,
how much noise would it make if Indiana were to go to Los Angeles and beat UCLA in the Rose Bowl?
Yeah, I mean, Indiana hasn't played. They said it this offseason. Indiana hasn't played in the Rose Bowl since it actually went to the Rose Bowl in 1968. So it's been a long time. They haven't played in that stadium since then. So I get that's what I'm saying, because you have those 3 non-conference games early in the season sandwiched around that UCLA game. If you win that UCLA game, there's no reason you shouldn't start 4-0. And boy, would that really build. And I mean, that's already more wins than you had last year. That would be one of those things where you've talked all offseason about building momentum and belief, and suddenly you're 4-0, and boy, that belief would just come crashing in all at once. That game against Maryland, if Indiana is 4-0 in that game, it would be one of the bigger crowds in the recent history of Indiana football. It'd be like that Cincinnati game in 2021, where it really felt like this is kind of a big moment in Indiana football history. You have a chance to really do something here. Of course, Indiana lost that one, and we all know what happened next. But it will be the same kind of thing where you build, when you're at a program like Indiana, you try to build for those moments, right? You try to, you win and you do what you can, you scratch and claw and try to prove to people we are going to build something here. And then you get an opportunity in front of a ton of people when they start to buy in. And then if you win one of those, it really starts to snowball in a good way. And so I think that if Indiana beats UCLA on the road, that game against Maryland would be a really, really important moment in the early tenure for Cignetti.
Well, I can go one better than that, because if they do that and win that Maryland game, and that puts them at 5-0, they go on the road next, but it's to Northwestern. It's not to Ohio State. They could be 6-0, already bowl secured, come back home with back-to-back home games against Nebraska and Washington. Both winnable games. You want to talk about getting crazy? Let's get nuts.
Yeah. And you're playing Nebraska off of a bye week. Like they get a bye week between Northwestern and Nebraska.
Oh.
You come into that Nebraska game. It's a traditional power. Like we're getting crazy here, right? Like that's the whole point of an offseason.
That's why I hate talking IU football right now, because I'm like,
yes.
I said, damn it, I'm not a homer, but I said it's hard to look at everything that's going on, it's coming up, and not be optimistic. It just it is, but
because you can see the path. You can see the path laid out, right? Like the path is there. So it's hard not to get excited, and it's hard not to be interested because the path is there and it's so clear to see.
We don't have time. We've run out of time, unfortunately, but I did want to talk about Purdue. I'm not feeling that bump from Purdue. I'm not feeling that there's this, boy, they're ramping up. I feel like a level quickly in 30 seconds. What about, is Purdue going to make a jump this year, or what's?
Their offseason hasn't been as loud as Indiana's, but it's actually been pretty quality. They brought in some really good transfers. What they've done is Ryan Walters really wants to have an athletic secondary that can make a lot of plays, and they've done that. They have a really, really good secondary, and I am honestly fascinated to see how that goes because they bring a lot back on offense. I still think probably 6-6 or 7-5 is the ceiling for them, but there is a chance that bucket game this year ends up being a really important game just for the kind of the future of the rivalry. So don't sleep on Purdue. I think they're going to be better than last year. I think they got better at the end of last season. I think Ryan Walters will learn, and I think they'll be better. So their offseason was not as loud, but still pretty quality.
Helmer Dog says it. Wistful thinking never hurts. So plenty of that going on. Dylan Sinn from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette. Appreciate you, my friend, as always.
Absolutely, Jim. Thanks for having me on.
You bet. Appreciate you. We've got lots more coming up here on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Kyle Neddenriep, Rick Bozich will join us in the next hour. All brought to you by Free Think. Just go to Free Think, whether you need 20 T-shirts for the upcoming family reunion or 200 for this summer's recreational softball, baseball leagues, whatever you got going. They'll take care of you with their professional staff and build you your own website for that. Reach out to them. Free Think at freethinkapparel.com. Back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the market. In the market. Helmer Dog.
In the market.
In the market. In the market. You can sail the 7 seas in the market. Johnny gets down on his knees in the market.
See, how can we ever get rid of this between break content? This is what the people come for. This is what they missed out on whenever I was gone last week for a few days.
I know.
Excuse me. You also get to hear us hack and cough. It's great. You get all the behind the scenes crap.
Pacers are stepping it up.
They really are. You go and pull in Kyle. Good morning, Kyle.
Morning.
Welcome in
Thank you.
to the humble abode.
Holy oh gosh, darn it. That hurt.
How are you, Kyle? How's it going, brother?
Hey, what's up, Jim?
Oh, just enjoying the heat.
Yeah, it's humid out there today.
Oh, I haven't even been out there today. What are you talking about? I was talking about yesterday. And it wasn't even as bad yesterday as it's going to be.
It's worse today, I think.
All right, here we go, guys. And within the Stonecrest golf community, choose from one of the gorgeous Stonecrest Signature Series house plans. We have several lots available with scenic views of the golf course. Contact Amy Rhoda with Rebesco Real Estate for additional information. 812-583-0919 or go to mystonecrestliving.com. That's mystonecrestliving.com for more details. This segment is brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Wednesday. We've made it to the halfway point. Thanks a lot for being with us. We appreciate you. Brought to you by Hoosier Hanks East, located right off of College Mall Road in Bloomington. Hoosier Hanks East has an array of custom pizzas, strums, baked wings, mac bowls, and fresh salads, so much more. Dine in, carry out, or have Hank cater your next event. If you're coming in to see the kids or coming in for a game, Hoosier Hanks is the place to go afterwards. Kyle Neddenriep from the Indy Star joining us now. How are you, sir?
Hey, good morning, Jim. How are you?
I cannot complain. Just saw there's some breaking news regarding the Pacers. I know that's not your beat, but huge news for Indianapolis and Indy and the Pacers. Pascal Siakam intends to sign a 4-year, $189.5 million max contract. I'll take the $0.5 million and be happy. He can have the 189. But those numbers are just stupid scary, aren't they?
They are. That's a at the end of I was helping out cover the Pacers at the end of the playoffs there, or through the playoffs, and at the end of the playoffs, kind of the exit interview, he was, I kind of sensed that he was going to come back. You never know, and he didn't fully outright say that, but it kind of got the impression that's what he wanted to have happen, and certainly the Pacers wanted that to happen. So, that's obviously an important offseason move for the Pacers, and I know one they were hoping to get done. Once the free agency moratorium ends. So that's good news, I think, for the Pacers. I thought he fit right into what they kind of the style they play, and there were some hiccups maybe early when he got there, but in the playoffs it seemed to be a really good fit, and obviously he's got that playoff experience and history too. So that's it's a lot of money, but it seems like a good situation for the Pacers.
A lot of money to be making living in the state of Indiana, man. Cost of living here is a lot less than it would be in, say, California and all that. But these players, I don't think people understand. Pro athletes have to pay taxes all over the place. They have to pay taxes in every state that they play in.
Yeah. I mean, I guess it's different problems. With more money, more problems. Is that the?
Yeah. It's it, man. It's it. Exactly. Kyle, we were talking earlier a lot about recruiting. Jalen Harrelson has set his some recruiting dates coming up. He'll come to Indiana on August 31st for an official visit. He goes to Notre Dame. After that, he goes to Michigan State after that as well. But we've long talked about this 2025 class. A couple of weeks after that, Indiana has Malachi Moreno, Trent Sisley, and Braylon Mullins coming in. And even though Malachi Moreno is not from Indiana, I'm starting to kind of consider him a part of this class just because he plays for the Indy Heat and there's just so much relationship there. But this is an important class, but it's going to be very interesting to see where they all land. Do any of them go to the same school? The only school that multiple of them could go to would be Indiana or say Notre Dame, because Purdue does not have the room, and in essence are now recruiting Braylon Mullins against Trent Sisley.
because they're only expected to have one spot open next year. So there's that. But I was talking about Trent Sisley, first of all, and the importance. Purdue and Matt Painter has recruited him hard. But Indiana, that's what we always considered it Indiana territory. And it's still important to me, I think, from an optic standpoint, for Indiana to not lose guys like that to anyone, much less to Purdue.
Yeah, certainly. I mean, it's a big one. I mean, and Sisley, obviously, there's a connection there with Purdue. I think there has been. I think they've recruited him well, and it's just the question of can IU. They're trying, like you said, they're trying to get multiple players in this class, and how does that all work? What's the relationship like there with all 4 of those guys you mentioned, and you're not probably going to get all 4 of them, but there's opportunities there. And yeah, I mean, Sisley, I saw some of the new rankings came out. I was a little surprised he dropped some based on what I've seen. I mean, they say, I guess I see more of these players than I do, but that still surprised me a bit. But yeah, I don't know what else to say. I mean, he said his. I wrote about him, I think, after the junior all-star game, and he'd set his officials at that point, and then added the Michigan State one. So I think it's sort of a waiting game. I'm going to see some of the Charlie Hughes this weekend, and we'll see who's out there watching some of those games for Mullins and Sisley and whatnot. But it seems like there's not a ton right now with Sisley to update, other than just monitoring who's at his games and seeing how he progresses as a player. He's fun to watch. I mean, it's fun to watch them play anytime you get to, but I don't know if there's a whole lot of new information at this point right now.
Well, I know Trent moved up in the Rivals rankings into the top 70 at number 67, and he didn't get the bump that he probably deserved. Part of that was probably taken away a little bit by Braylon Mullins, just making a little more noise is all. But Trent's game, we were talking about that very thing earlier, has risen as well as anyone's. He just scored 48 points in a team camp at IU over the weekend in a winning game, no doubt. But he is just a utility player. He can play 1, 2, 3, and probably soon will be able to play the 4 at 6'8". I'm not saying he's a point guard, but he could definitely play a 2, the 3, the 4, and who knows what he ends up as he continues to go further along with his career, because his shooting has continued to pick up. He has to battle inside the paint a lot. Hell, he has to do that in high school because he's getting triple teamed everywhere all the time. So that's probably been a great benefit to him.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's helped his game to be able to play multiple spots, and he's asked to do different things on high school and AAU. His differences are quite a bit. I mean, he doesn't, for his high school team, he just has to do so much, and play inside. He does play outside for them too, but now with Indiana Elite, which is probably more of what it looks like, playing with those college level players to compare to what it looks like in college. And I've been real impressed with that, and seeing him play with the junior all-stars, playing facing up. And now he was asked to guard Flory, which is not what he would do in college. And that was difficult, but he can, he's, like you said, 6'8". He's very super versatile. He may not be like the one and done NBA guy, but he's certainly going to be a potentially really good college player. I mean, in my opinion, and I think the opinion of a lot of people. So yeah, I mean, he just works really hard. He's and that sounds, that sounds like a baseline thing that you would expect, but you don't always see it with everybody. And I think that's a real plus in his corner, is that he just works real hard at it, and he's got a pretty hard edge to him as a competitor. So those are things I've seen with Trent, and I think he's he's pretty. It's his recruitment will be really interesting, I think, because it's been really strong in state all the way throughout. And then you add in Michigan State, which is almost like an in-state school in itself. So it's just been really
Iowa's an in-state school because they usually have more players from Indiana on their roster than anybody outside of Purdue and Indiana.
Yeah, it's the schools that you see really recruit Indiana hard and have success that have been in with Trent, and then you add Notre Dame with Micah being there now, so there's a good relationship there as well. So yeah, I mean it's Notre Dame might be the one that ends up with the Xavier Robinson from Lawrence North. I mean I think that's a real possibility. Who's also a really good player in that class. Whether they can get any of these others, I'm not sure, but I know they like him and vice versa. So we'll see. I mean, it's really good. A lot of depth, Brady Kaler too, from Cathedral. We don't talk about a lot, but he's another one that, he's a potential guy who could stay, in state and go to Notre Dame too. So Notre Dame's going to they're in that conversation now. So we'll see, but they're in the mix for these guys.
And I talked about that earlier as well, and not so much more about Micah and the job that he is doing there, and it is palpable. You can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it, because it's been a long time, if ever. Even when Digger Phelps was there, did you hear Indiana, Notre Dame, and Purdue all fighting for the same kids? Notre Dame was still I feel like they still recruited more nationally, and I don't mean national great players because they were never really a powerhouse or anything, but they would just get guys from all over, not so much from the state, whereas Purdue and Indiana were quite the opposite. But that's maybe because Indiana and Purdue got the best of the best that during those runs. But Micah Shrewsbury is going to put Notre Dame in a position where there is going to be a three-headed monster, and that's to say three-headed if Butler doesn't get going under
Mata.
Thad. If they could get back up to speed, to have 4 elite programs like that in a state this small, mind-boggling. But it's not because of the talent that comes out of here, but they're, the rosters are filled with guys from all over the place. But how quickly that Micah has made the inroads that he has made, that's a little surprising, because he's kind of hit the ground running at Notre Dame, and every time you turn around, a good recruit is linked to them in one way or another.
Oh yeah, I mean, and when Coach Bray was there, they recruited really well, and they had success. His program had success. I mean, so it's not like they weren't. They were just flatlining. They had success. They had Jaden Ivey. They would get like when Demetrius Jackson went there, that was huge for them. Another in-state player he was right there in South Bend, and so they did. They had some in-state success, but often would go to the East Coast where he had ties, and he was a really good recruiter, I thought, and so not to denigrate what he did, and honestly, Micah just has more. He's been at Butler, he's been at Purdue, he is from Indianapolis, so there's just many more ties. His recruiting staff, they have ties to Indiana as well, so it makes sense, that they're more in the mix and in play now. For some of these guys. And honestly, I was up at Notre Dame's campus not long ago, and you go up there, man, it's impressive. You can see why, well, certainly football, obviously, and they've done it for years, but just being on that campus, it's like, wow, it's not that there's a lot of great campuses, obviously, but there's definitely a different feel to that one in Notre Dame. And so you can, to get the right kids up there, I'm sure it'd be hard to turn that down.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful place. What's up next for you, Kyle?
Wrote a big story on Matthew Graves, the new Indiana State coach that went up yesterday, and wrote about got a hold of Cannon Ketching's mom, talked to her yesterday about his decommitment from Purdue and then commitment to BYU. So those are up there. Joey Hart getting the job at Cloverdale after his falling out at Linton Stockton, kind of, cool for him. He's been sober 450 days or so now, and getting back into the high school coaching game. So so all three of those stories went up yesterday, and then got a story today on some of the best quarterbacks in Indiana, starting to get out our football stuff going now. So people can look for that this morning.
No rest for the weary, huh?
No, not really. And then Charlie Hughes this weekend, so I'll be out at some of that. A lot of the weekend.
Is that up in Fort Wayne?
No, it's here. Carmel and Westfield.
Well, man, who all was expected to be there?
There's like 130. It's all high school. It's all I'll have some out on that too. I was actually just doing that this morning, but pretty much all the Jeffersonville Fishers, everybody pretty much. Ben Davis, all the big teams that are.
So this is a team event, not these are all team events then.
Yeah, it's basically you get 4 games. Back in the day when Charlie was still alive, and they would do a tournament at the they'd have bracket play. You play for a tournament title. You can't really do that during evaluation. I think it's limited to 4 games you can play as a team. So they just play. Basically, everyone plays 4 games for the weekend.
Enjoy it, sir. We'll look forward to it. That's a lot of great stuff out there. What was the key? Anything pop in reasoning for Ketching's decommitment?
She kind of talking to Taja. It was something I know, and I'm pretty sure this was out there even last year. But he almost decommitted last summer when he went to Overtime Elite. In hindsight, maybe should have, but then, his Overtime Elite coach ended up going to BYU as an assistant. They have a new coach there who's from the NBA, was coaching at Phoenix the last maybe 5 years, Kevin Young. And it wasn't, I would say the connection from Overtime Elite to BYU is definitely something that came into play. But the issue with Purdue wasn't that. I think he's looking to. I think he basically feels like he can get to the NBA faster. And this will. And credit to Painter. I mean, he wasn't going to say, "Hey, yeah, we're doing whatever we can to get you to the NBA." I mean, they're trying to run their program. Just at the end of the day, I think there was 2 different philosophies on development, and we'll see how it works out. I mean, Cannon's definitely. I mean, he's projected as a first-round pick by Draft Express for next year. So and those guys know what they're doing, and they obviously see something with Cannon. So it's one of those things where I think this is probably for the better for both parties in the long run. Of course, Purdue would love to have him, but I don't know if it would have been a happy fit necessarily. So it's interesting. The timing of it just not great, but this probably worked out for the better, I think, for both parties in this case.
We'll certainly see it. Make sure Kyle's got a bunch of stuff out, it sounds like, so go check it out at the Indy Star. Kyle, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
You bet. Thanks, Jim.
Absolutely. Hey, up next, the man Rick Bozich joins us. We got plenty more to get to. Brought to you by Boost Fundraising. If you know anyone, groups needing a fundraiser, Boost Fundraising does it faster and offers the most unique and user-friendly online fundraiser in the nation. Your team receives personalized fundraising pages for each team member, free team-branded promo gifts shipped to each donor. Boost Fundraising does it all, whether it's sports teams, marching bands, charity causes, or community groups. Just go to boostfundraising.com. Be sure to enter the promo code COIL to receive the discounted fundraiser. Back with Rick Bozich after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Formerly. Hello, sir.
Hi.
How are you?
Feeling lazy after all the stuff that he said he just posted today.
All right, I was like, damn, dude, you're done for the week.
Yeah. I'm sure there's more than that even involved with Ketchings. We didn't even get into the NIL part of it.
Yeah, I'm like, wow, how the heck BYU just loses their coach and they add 2 projected NBA draft picks.
I mean, part of it is they get that overtime elite guy, and then they brought the guy in from the Suns, so that gives them some cachet. But I don't know. It's a pretty big culture shock going from suburban Indianapolis to Provo, Utah.
It's like, boy, he better study up on the ways of Mormonism. It's not the same.
Yeah.
Are they allowed to drink soft drinks?
I don't think you can drink caffeinated ones, but I don't know. I guess it's just 7 months, but wouldn't be my choice.
Yeah, me either. It's beautiful. Well, you got Red Rocks. I guess you could go down and watch some concerts.
Oh, that was Colorado.
You know what?
What do I know?
No, I was thinking that southwestern part of Utah. I don't know. What do I know? What do I know? Oh, Kentucky plays today, don't they?
11 o'clock, baby.
Now, if y'all talk about that, don't mention that because this airs after 11 a.m. on the stations.
I know. K-Bro down there covering Florida, Kevin Brockway.
I saw that, yeah. Florida State. Oh, and Florida.
Yeah,
they're both there.
Yeah,
he's there for Florida, but he's there for Florida. But Florida State's also there, so he's got 2 of the last 5 teams left.
Well, is North Carolina State out of it now?
Yeah, they got beat. Yes, 2 days ago.
Yeah, he was covering them, so they gone.
Yeah, it's down to 5. Tennessee, Texas A&M, Kentucky, Florida, and Florida State. 4 SEC and 1 ACC.
All right, here we go, guys.
Honda with no payments for 90 days. That's right. 2023 and 2024 Honda Pilots, HRVs, CRVs, Honda Ridgelines, payment free for 90 days. Or get 0.9% APR financing for 36 months on a 2023 Honda Ridgeline. Go to anymoreHonda.com and get more to your door.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville and Evansville. Pizza, burgers, beer. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back on this Wednesday. Our good friend Rick Bozich joins us. And Rick, it's supposed to be the quiet time of year, but it's not exactly that. Plenty going on, plenty to talk about coming up, plenty happening right now with the College World Series. The Kentucky Wildcats are what game they're in an elimination game today with Florida. We'll see how that goes. And if the winner of that game has to play tonight, which is very unusual, a doubleheader in the College World Series.
Yeah, they had some bad weather last night, so they canceled the games on Tuesday night. So there's actually a triple header today. There's a game at 11. Then the other bracket, I think, plays at 3, and then this bracket that Kentucky's in has another game at 7. So they'll try and get back on schedule. I've been to Omaha before. That's a grind.
Oh, our buddy Cabral down there, he's grinding it out. 4 SEC schools remaining, 1 ACC school. We talked about this the other day. Actually, going in, there was 4 and 4, just 2 conferences. Is it bad or does it matter for college baseball that it's dominated by pretty much by the SEC, then the ACC, along with a few independents?
Yeah, I mean, the problem, Jim, is I don't know what you can do to fix it because so much of it is
weather situation
dictated by the weather. I mean, if you're a really good player and you've got an offer to play at, Ohio State or Indiana or Purdue, Northwestern, Illinois, or you have a chance to go play at, Ole Miss or Florida or wherever, where are you going to go? Because, you're going to be out there playing in snowflakes and practicing in 27-degree weather outside. Those places down there have got better weather. And the reality, they got much better facilities. You look at some of the SEC teams, they have nicer facilities than a lot of minor league parks. And they draw. I mean, they draw LSU, Ole Miss, and Mississippi State routinely draw 10,000 or more, and Kentucky's got a new park. They're drawing 5 for the 5,000 or 6,000 regular season. On the weekend, maybe 7. So it's they've got a built-in advantage, and until that, the schools that I think are underachieving are the West Coast schools. It used to be that Southern Cal and Arizona State and Arizona were really dominant in college baseball, and it's not that way anymore. I don't know what's happened to the West Coast teams. The SEC and the ACC have really taken over.
Yeah, that's an opportunity for, say, the Big Ten maybe in the future with Oregon and Washington and UCLA, USC to raise up that end to get a quasi Big Ten school into the college baseball scene at that level. But then you've got teams like Indiana, who's the southernmost Big Ten team, who's pretty. I mean, they made the tournament this year.
Yeah.
They are obviously continue to work at that. But like you said, when spring comes, they have to take off. They have to go on these road trips down to Auburn, down to Ole Miss, down to these places, Florida, to get these games in so they can play without worrying about weather and all this, that, and the other thing. But before that, for practice, they're either in the Mellencamp indoor facility or whatever, which can't be as fun.
And it's more than that. I mean, not only is it better for the players, it's better for the fans. When you have games, in April or May and the weather's warmer down south, you're going to get a bigger crowd. They're going to come out and watch. And that's why they have the bigger. I mean, at some of these SEC schools, it's almost like football type things where they play Friday night, as the ace pitcher for both teams, and then Saturday and Sunday, and fans get there early and they tailgate and they have season tickets and the whole deal. It's a big cultural thing down there. And just look at some of the coaches in the Big Ten who've been successful. Tracy Smith, after he had success, he left for a warm weather job at Arizona State. Chris Lemonis had success at IU. He went to Mississippi State where he won a national title. The coach at Michigan was in the finals of the College World Series. I don't know, it's maybe 2021. And either that year or the next year he left and went to Clemson. I mean, it's just
and was replaced by
Tracy Smith.
Yes,
right.
Circle continues.
On the coaching staff, although I saw he just retired or quit this year.
Who did? Who was that?
Josh Fegley, the former IU catcher who played in the big leagues. He was Tracy Smith's assistant coach for 2 years, but I saw he just resigned. But it's just the built-in advantages created by the weather and the facilities and the fan support. Just give them a big advantage. And I'll say it's really demanding. I mean, Lemonis won the national championship in 2021 and missed the tournament either the next year, and then the next year he barely made it, and he's on the hot seat this year. I mean, 2 years after winning the title. LSU won last year, and they underachieved this year, and I follow a couple guys that cover LSU. I mean, they were on that dude. Like, what are you doing? That was last year. We don't care. Why are we a 3 seed this year?
They take baseball serious in the SEC. I mean, it's like football. It's just under football.
Yes, it is.
It is a great. It's a great social event. You talk about the facilities they have. I think Ole Miss, where my daughter goes, that thing holds like 13,000 or something. That's a pretty good crowd for, like you said. That's bigger than a lot of minor league ballparks.
And they have a tradition. They all put guys in the big leagues, and that's another thing they can use to attract people to come there. Of saying, okay, I mean, you want to come to the school where David Price pitched at Vanderbilt, or Sonny Gray at Vanderbilt, or I'm blanking on some of the names. But there's Jack, Will Clark, and those dudes, Rafael Palmeiro at Mississippi State, and Arkansas has got a bunch of guys in the big leagues right now. Texas A&M is another program that's produced a lot of big leaguers. I mean, that's a big selling point for those schools. LSU's had a Albert Bell and Ben McDonald, and on and on and on.
I saw you had a piece a while back, a week or so ago, about Scotty Scheffler, and did that incident possibly, because we talked about how he played great that day, because you said he was on adrenaline, but the next day, he came crashing down and had been playing really well before and after that. But did that incident cost him a shot at the golf's Grand Slam? Was your question in your piece?
At this point now, I mean, after the way he played at the U.S. Open, I'd say probably not, because he didn't really compete at all in the U.S. Open. He was out of contention really after the first day, and certainly by the second. But I'd say at this point in the aftermath of the U.S. Open, I'd say no, it didn't. Going into the U.S. Open, I think that was definitely a fair question to ask, because he'd come back and played so well and won the Memorial.
And then I saw that you guys also had a clip in regards to the Louisville mayor saying that he's confident the PGA Championship will return to Louisville. Well, it might, but it won't in his definitely in his tenure, or maybe not in his lifetime.
Yeah, I mean, he can be confident. I don't know. That doesn't mean anything. Nobody knows. The people who are the decision makers aren't really connected to Mayor Greenberg. There really only are 2 spots open in the next 10 years, I think. And it's very competitive. A lot of courses want to have the PGA. And, in the aftermath of what happened to Scheffler, we'll see.
How's that not going to be the first thing that people think of? I mean, when you think, Louisville, that's what PGA. Oh, yeah, it's where Scotty Scheffler got arrested, right?
Yeah, and it's more than just what the PGA wants. It's what the people at Valhalla want. I mean, they've gone through a big change in the last couple of years where the PGA sold that course to 5 local businessmen, and now it's basically a course for people that want to invest that much money in playing on their own private golf course, and to give up your course for a major championship in any certain year is a big deal. I mean, the members have to start playing there, a month or 6 weeks out. So that means like when spring comes and you want to play at your favorite course, you've been inside all winter or playing out of town all winter, you can't do it that one year. And then it's torn up for several weeks afterwards. I'm sure Valhalla's not back to normal yet. So it's a very complicated decision. And I hope it comes back, but I have no ability to say that it will.
What do courses, how do they benefit by having an event like that? Not the city, but the course, because of all the things you just mentioned. These are all courses with members, and they pay a lot of money to belong to these courses. They don't get to play for probably, 3-4 months total before and after.
I don't know the financial breakdown. I'm sure there has to be some kind of payment from the PGA or whatever to the course to use their course to fund their major championship. I don't know whether they get a percentage of some of the money off concessions or they get a percentage of the money off any merchandise that's sold, but there has to be some kind of remuneration to make it worth their while. And I'm sure that any big investments that are made at the course, the whatever entity brings the event into your facility has to pay for those.
Absolutely. And I've never played Valhalla with good reason, probably. But I've been there to all the events except for this past one. I was not able to make it down for that, but beautiful course. I mean, it started by an Indiana guy, actually, the Gam family there in Jeffersonville.
Yes. Yeah. Dwight Gam and his 3 sons. Yeah. They had a dream in the 80s. And as we've talked about before, one of the sons played football at Purdue, had a connection to Bob Greasy. Bob Greasy is friends with Jack Nicklaus. So they got Jack Nicklaus to agree to talk to him about designing a course, and everything clicked, and the rest is history. It's interesting. The last PGA championship in Indianapolis was at Crooked Stick. I don't think it's ever come back there, right?
1991.
Yeah. Which is, I don't know whether it was that because the members don't want to bring it back or whether they didn't have a good experience there or what it is. But I mean, like I said, it's hard to get a major championship to come to your course.
Well, and the Crooked Stick is not like it's probably not the number 1 course in the state. I mean, of course you go to the Dye course, but that would be a difficult, which
is that the one in French Lick?
Yeah. And they have hosted
I think it was the U.S. Open or maybe it was the PGA. I can't remember. Back way back in the early 1900s. But that would be a problem for parking for people to get. That's not easy for people to get to. I don't know if that's
hotels. Yeah, it'd be a nightmare.
Not be able to do that. But then you've got like a place, say Victoria National in Evansville. Now that's one of the top courses. I'm not sure where else they would have it.
Isn't there a course in Franklin that's pretty good? I thought there was.
There's several courses around. Hell, Purdue has 2 really nice courses up there as well. So it's
I don't even. What is the best course in Indianapolis?
That's a good question. I don't know if it's still Crooked Stick or not. I'd have to research that, and maybe I'll do that in the break. We've got to take one. We've got Rick Bozich with us. Plenty more to get to. Brought to you by our good friends down in Sellersburg at Reynolds Family Dentistry. Go see Dr. J to keep that championship smile. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
In the
Right.
Victoria National ranked number 1.
Okay.
Crooked Stick number 2. Crooked Stick. Crooked Stick is the course where Pete Dye became Pete Dye.
Look and see if there's one like at Franklin.
Shoot, Sycamore Hills in Fort Wayne.
Yeah.
The foul course here in Bloomington is number 5. The Donna Ross is number 6. They list the Brickyard Crossing as number 7. That's a little hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
The Burke Boilermaker course. Holiday Farms in Zionsville.
What about Otter Creek in Columbus? That's not a good one anymore.
I haven't got like at number 10 is Warren Golf Course at Notre Dame. 11 is the Sagamore Club in Noblesville. 12 is South Bend Country Club. 13 is the club at Chatham Hills in Westfield. 14 is Rock Hollow in Peru, Indiana.
Wow.
15 is the other Purdue course.
Excuse me.
Well, did it stop at 15?
That one in Columbus used to be a big deal. It's where they played the IHSA championship every year.
I'd like to see all of them. Indiana.
Otter Creek is a Robert Trent Jones course. In Columbus.
There's the Fort in Indianapolis. Broadmoor Country Club of Indianapolis. Show more. Harrison Hills in Attica. Brickyard Crossing. Prairie View. And Carmel.
All right, here we go, guys.
Meats, bakery items, and now fresh seafood. Chop Shop Market and Table has the largest selection of in-house made products around and everything you need to make a gourmet meal at home. Or pick out a tomahawk steak or a grouper filet and enjoy it cooked to perfection in Chop Shop Steakhouse. Chop Shop Market and Table, a part of the Wild Food Group, is your butcher, baker, and fish house, no matter where you live.
This segment is brought to you by the Fresh Fork in Bloomington. Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Welcome back, Indiana Sports Beat Radio on this Wednesday. Rick Bozich with me, and Jim Coyle here at your service. Brought to you by the Fresh Fork. Enjoy healthy, delicious meals at home without the hassle. With the Fresh Fork, chef-curated, ready-made meals delivered right to your doorstep.
proudly fueling IU athletes and now available to you with a menu that's always fresh and diverse, from hearty proteins to fresh salads. The Fresh Fork empowers you to make better food choices without compromising. Order online and let the Fresh Fork help transform your lifestyle for a healthier way of living today at thefreshforkonline.com. Use the promo code radio20 and get $20 off your first order. What's your weekend looking set up to be like, Rick?
Part of it's going to depend on what happens with Kentucky in the NCAA tournament, whether they still survive and make it to the finals, which are this weekend in Omaha. There's, for the listeners that don't, it's really kind of takes a while to adjust to it, but there's 2 4-team pools, and the winners survive on each side, and then the 2 champs of the pools play a best 2 out of 3 series starting Saturday. So if they make that, I'll be covering that. There's also something going on in Louisville this weekend, which I'm going to go to. Remember Flagey High School, right?
Oh, yeah.
Well, Flagey High School closed 50 years ago this year. And
it's an apartment building now, isn't it?
I think so. But they're having a reunion of the remaining Flagey grads. I think there's still like 1,700 of them that are still alive, and more than 500 are coming to a reunion. And it was a school that produced, obviously, Paul Horning and Howard Schnellenberger and, Oscar Brahm and a bunch of people. So I'm going to probably go to that.
The kind of the heart and soul of Louisville athletics, the city of Louisville athletics, because these guys went in different directions. But
yeah,
those are some pretty famous names to all come out of the same little bitty. And this was a small little Catholic school.
Right. Yeah. It was the big, well, St. X was around then, but Flagey was right there with St. X. And then things changed in the city and Trinity emerged, and Flagey, the student population kept shrinking, and eventually it closed in 1974. But the people that went to school there are extremely loyal to that school. And they have a very robust alumni association. They meet once a month and have lunch. And, 50 or 60 guys still show up every month to tell stories about the kind of nonsense they did in high school. And they get pretty good speakers to come and talk to them.
They have a better alumni association than most active schools, probably.
Of course they do. Yeah, they do.
It's amazing. Basketball on the college front now, things have pretty much started to settle down as far as rosters. The biggest names are kind of out. Coleman Hawkins was one of the last one of the big names to come out of there. Now Kentucky, Louisville, Indiana, Purdue, they're all kind of set. Notre Dame is still. I've been talking a lot about Micah Shrewsbury and Notre Dame and how he's going to make a difference there.
He is.
Because it's palpable. You can see it, feel it, hear it. What he is doing, he's making inroads.
Yeah, he's a hard worker. And he's out on the recruiting trail connecting with guys. He won't get them all, but he'll get his share. And I know that last year when I watched him come down here and play Louisville, you could tell what his plan was. They're going to really defend like crazy. And he was going to have guys who could, 2 or 3 guys in his team that could make threes and play off them and play more of the modern style of basketball with 4 out and 1 in. I was a little surprised he lost one of his good freshmen. I think Booth was his name. Calvin Booth's son from the Denver Nuggets. He left, but he had good guards, his son, and he had the kid. What's the kid's name from up in, he's either Elkhart or Penn or something, Marcus something.
Oh, yes.
He was good.
Yeah.
I'll look it up right now. But Mike Shrewsbury will have Notre Dame back in the tournament. I don't know if it'll be this year, but it'll be definitely by the 2026 season.
And when Kyle was on with us earlier, Kyle Neddenriep, the Indy Star, talked about Xavier Robinson, one of the top players in the Indy metro area, goes to Lawrence North High School,
right.
Probably heading to Notre Dame. So there's a good in-state recruit, which
Marcus Burton is the name of the guy.
Marcus Burton. Getting a core Indiana kids is going to be something that Notre Dame really didn't do a lot of. While Mike Brave did fine. Hell, he had some great years, but it's when you've got Indiana and Purdue already, plus Butler, plus Louisville, Kentucky, Michigan State, Iowa, all recruiting the state pretty religiously, it's kind of hard to feed everybody. But fortunately, the state does produce a lot of talent, but Notre Dame hasn't always gotten their share of it. But I think that that's going to change.
Yeah, I mean, Shrewsbury's got an edge. He's from Indiana. Didn't he go to Cathedral? He's got, I think, family
from Jeffersonville originally.
Right. He's got connections down in Jeffersonville. He coached with Matt Painter at Purdue. He coached with Brad Stevens. People in the state know him and trust him and like him. So he's going to be a force to deal with in terms of recruiting.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame hasn't usually done that. I mean, when Digger was there, they went national and tried to get guys from all over the country. John McLeod, I think, followed him. And then Bray had kind of a weird recruiting philosophy. He got, when they were really good, he got them going by getting transfers. He was ahead of the curve on that. I remember he had Hansborough and Tyler Hansborough's little brother who came in from Mississippi State and a couple of other decent transfers who came in there. He always had older teams.
Didn't he get one of the Zeller brothers?
Yeah, he did get Luke. He got the first Zeller brother. That's a famous story. Mike Davis screwed that up. One of many things he screwed up. I think I was told the story by somebody that would know that when Luke Zeller was, I think, a junior in high school, he had gone up for a visit with his family. And I don't remember if IU won or lost, but they waited around after the game to say goodbye or talk to Davis. And Davis was doing something else. He was in one of his offices or whatever. One of the assistant coaches came over and knocked on the door and said, "Hey, the Zellers are here. They want to say goodbye." And Davis said, "Hey, tell them I'm busy. I'll get with them later." And the Zellers were standing right outside the door and heard him say that. And that was the end of the Luke Zeller to Indiana connection. He also screwed up Greg Oden and Mike Conley. He also screwed up Josh McRoberts of Carmel, who went to Duke. Other than that, he had a really good record. And I like Mike Davis, but
yeah. How did the Conley Oden thing happen? Because I've always wondered, how the hell does that duo get out of the state of Indiana?
I think first of all, you got to give Thad Matta credit because he was on him hard and he knew the people to talk to get those guys recruited. But it's also been shared with me that Mike really liked Greg Oden, but he wasn't sure about Mike Conley, who's only played in the NBA now for 17 years or whatever it is.
That's all.
He wasn't convinced on him.
He was sure about Mike Davis Jr.
Well, that was at Detroit. I don't know. That was bad. That was the beginning of the demise of IU basketball. You can't let Josh McRoberts and Greg Oden and Mike Conley go somewhere else. I mean, I'm not saying
the hiring of Mike Davis was the beginning of the end.
Yes,
you can't turn the keys of a Ferrari over to a 12-year-old.
Yes, it was.
And that's exactly what Indiana did. So I don't blame Mike Davis. I blame the administration, which, boy, we could sure.
Well, the mistake they made was they had to make him the interim coach the first year because it happened in September, right? Yep. So, you're not going to get somebody to come and take the job in September. But they didn't have to make him the permanent coach after the first year.
They succumbed to team pressure.
Then he went to then he went to the Final Four, and then it was over at that point. There's no way.
It was done.
Yeah, it was done. But he wasn't equipped or prepared or mature enough to handle all parts of the job. And it didn't take long to show.
He admits that today easily.
He does. He did okay in some aspects of recruiting. Remember, he got Bracy Wright and Marshall Strickland and Robert Vaden and some of those DJ White and some of those guys that were good players, but he wasn't going to get Eric Gordon, and he didn't get Josh McRoberts, and he didn't get Greg Oden or Mike Conley, and he didn't get Luke Zeller, which led to them not getting Tyler Zeller either. So I give Crean credit for, Indiana was going to go 0 for 3 on the Zeller brothers. And Crean made sure that didn't happen.
unfortunately, Crean did not make sure that Kyle Guy happened. That was another boy. We could sit here and have a discussion.
But Jim,
just
we're right
about the
back in
guys.
that situation now. What are people going to say? Braylon Mullins just made the biggest jump of any player in the country in the 24/7 ratings. He's up in the top 25. Trent Sisley is in there, and who's the Harrelson. How many of those guys does Mike Woodson need to get to keep people from losing their mind? One, the bare minimum, or is it going to have to be two?
Bare minimum was one, because in today's age, I think that we've seen that the options are beyond just schools, because money is involved. There's so many other things involved.
Yeah, but money isn't a problem for Indiana. We've seen that this spring.
No, I know, but I mean, everybody else has money too.
Right.
And, but it also could be a situation like Kanan Catchings, where he wants to get to the NBA, which means he wants to be a one and done, which he's projected to be a one and done, but he didn't see a path for that as well by going to Purdue and sitting behind Fletcher Lawyer or whomever he was going to have to sit behind, because
Right.
Matt Painter is not going to sit his main guys, and we know
Right.
that.
Right.
So, but you'd sure like to see Indiana, and it's not just these three guys. I kind of add Malachi Moreno into that group, although he's an outlier, because that's the guy you can actually pick up in the portal, and you don't have the same optics that go along with Jalen Harrelson or Trent Sisley or Braylon Mullins, guys of that stature. They have to get one of those three, a minimum, I think. And Trent Sisley is important for two reasons: because he's part of that group, but also, as I've talked about earlier, because he is a Southern Indiana kid. He is what you would call in the he used to be the definitive IU area. Purdue, no one else got kids out of Southern
Right.
Indiana.
Right.
Trey Kaufman-Wren, I think, was like one of the first, but I think that was strictly because Indiana had a coach named Archie Miller, another administration faux pas. But that's why that was the case then. Has Indiana done enough with Sisley? I don't know. Because I know Matt Painter has recruited and recruits him hard.
Yeah, I think I've read that it's Michigan State, Purdue, and Indiana in some order on him. So, but this Mullins thing is just blown up to where, I think he's visiting Kentucky next week unofficially or something. It's like UConn, Duke, all these schools are involved, and maybe Kansas, maybe I'm misreading the situation, but it sounded like a year ago that IU was in the pole position and didn't really invest the time in locking it down or trying to strengthen their position. And now it's he can go anywhere and end up being worse than Kyle Guy in many ways, in that he's considered a higher ranked recruit than Kyle Guy.
Yeah, for fans, it's important. They want to see Indiana kids on the Indiana roster. It's not going to be going to be what Purdue has, but Purdue is not going to win a national championship that way either.
Right. No, I mean, they got to get either. I think they've got to get either Mullins or Harrelson, one of the two, because they kind of. I haven't seen them play, but it seems like they're play somewhat the same position. They're both kind of wings. Harrelson might be a little bit better of a ball handler, and Mullins a better shooter. I don't know enough. They don't play together in AAU, so I'm not sure they want to play together in college. Mullins is more connected, obviously, with Sisley and Moreno, right? And those guys are taking their visits together. And I saw yesterday it was announced that Harrelson's taking his first official visit to Indiana. So they're in position, but those guys have been on the radar now for 2 years, and people have been watching it unfold. And you got to get some of them, because we've talked about this before, the beginning of the end for Tom Crean was when he whiffed on Scruggs and Wilkes and Jackson and Malik Williams, 4 top 70 players in the state of Indiana, and he didn't get any of them. And they ended up with Clifton Moore and I don't know, what was it, Justin Smith? Is that his name?
Oh yeah.
Yeah. The guy that went to Arkansas, him and
yep.
I don't Al Durham maybe, or I mean, decent players, but not great players.
Yeah, and you have to wonder, has Woody fallen in love with the portal too much? This is the first year they're really going to have their claws into Indiana recruits,
Right.
and so what happens will be the first results of that. Really, it's taken a little too long for that to be the case, I think.
Yeah, and that was weird. I don't know if you looked at the 24/7 ratings actually, but yesterday that was interesting. There's a kid from Cathedral who's also in there.
Guys.
Brady Kohler.
Oh, that's
he's
the kid
actually
that's
ranked.
going to Notre Dame, probably, right?
I don't know. He's ranked ahead of Sicily, which I was surprised by that.
Well, that makes me wonder, is that because Sicily's on the same team as Braylon Mullins and Malachi Moreno? Because it makes no sense. He rises in the rivals rankings. He's had a great year. He just had a 48-point team camp game at IU. So it's, some of it's goofy. What's up next for you, sir?
I'm getting ready to watch baseball the rest of the day, and wanted to give a salute. Greatest baseball player of all time passed away yesterday. Can't let that go by. I was lucky enough when I was, I don't remember. I was still a young kid. My dad took me to see him play against the Cubs, and I looked up the box score last night and found it. He got 2 singles that day.
Say hey kid, Willie Mays.
Number 24. Loved watching him he'd tap his glove 2 or 3 times and then hold it down here and make the basket catch. He had style, he had grace, and that's when baseball was king, baby. He was the biggest sports star in America,
and he had talent. The best ever, maybe. Rick Bozich, appreciate you as always, sir.
All right, see you next week.
Absolutely. A big thanks to Rick, Dylan Sinn, Kyle Neddenriep. Biggest thanks of all to you guys, each and every one of you, for joining us here on the program today. Happy Juneteenth to those celebrating. And it's the midway point of the week, so it's all downhill from here. Big thanks to John, a producer, for keeping us between the white lines as well. We're back tomorrow to do it again. Looking forward to it. Until then, I'm Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.